Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. Her hand shot across my chest and grabbed the wheel. The car drifted left and my stomach snapped tight. I jerked the steering back and felt the tires bite hard. She did not let go. Why would she do that? I'm Mason, 29, and I still hear that horn. It came from our left and it sounded close enough to touch. My palms went wet and my throat turned dry fast. I clamped the wheel and tried to breathe through it. "What are you doing?" My voice came out ugly. She stared ahead like she was watching a movie. I saw her knuckles white on the rim, calm and steady. That calm scared me more than the swerve. The lane line flashed under us and vanished again. I leaned forwards like my body could anchor the car. I pushed my knee into the console for leverage. She pressed harder and I felt the wheel fight back. I tried to peel her fingers off one by one. She twisted with me, matching every move. The car wobbled and the engine pitch jumped up. I stopped pulling because we started sliding again. Another horn blasted, and this one held longer. I stole a look left and caught a grill right there. I snapped my eyes forward and forced the wheel right. Her hand stayed planted like she wanted impact. "Let go," I didn't yell, I begged. She blinked once and her mouth twitched at the corner. She kept her gaze forward and breath slow through her nose. That little twitch felt like a decision. I jammed my elbow down to pin her wrist. She slipped out and grabbed higher on the wheel. My shoulder cramped and my back hit the seat hard. The car drifted again and my mind went blank. You know that feeling when your thoughts shut off mid-sentence? That hit me and I moved on pure reflex. I hit the brakes and pulses and prayed we stayed straight. Her grip fought my correction like a tug of war. She finally released for half a second, then snapped back on. That fake release almost got us worse. I overcorrected and the rear swung out a little. I tasted metal and thought, this is it. I forced my voice low like that would fix it. "Hands off," my jaw locked as I said it. She turned her head toward me, still holding the wheel. Her eyes looked bored, like I was being dramatic. I shoved her forearm away with the heel of my hand. She let it happen and then reached again, softer this time. Not a panic grab, more like a test touch. That was when anger punched through the fear. I snapped my arm out and blocked her like a guard. She leaned back and lifted both hands for a beat. Okay, she smiled like she won something. Then she put one finger back on the rim. I took the next exit without thinking it through. My chest thudded and my legs felt weird on the pedals. I kept glancing at her hands like they were a weapon. She watched me watch her and stayed silent. We rolled into a parking lot and I stopped too fast. My hand stayed on the wheel even after we parked. She exhaled like she was done with the whole scene. Then she laughed under her breath, quiet and sharp. She leaned across the console and tried to fix my collar. I flinched hard and shoved her hand away on instinct. Her smile froze for a beat, then snapped right back. That quick switch made my skin crawl. Why so smooth? "Are you done?" Her voice sounded light and bored. I opened my door and stood up too fast. My legs shook and I hated that she could see it. She stayed seated like I was the embarrassing one. I paced 2 steps and pressed my palms to my thighs. My chest kept jumping like it forgot the danger ended. She watched me through the windshield and didn't move. No tremor, no white eyes, nothing that matched mine. "Talk to me," she lifted her chin like a teacher. I pointed at the steering wheel, then at her. "You touched it again and we're finished," my words clipped short. She blinked slow like she was bored of the topic. She got out and closed her door with care. Then she reached for my forearm, gentle like a nurse. I pulled back and she held her hands up, palms out. That gesture looked rehearsed and it hit me late. "You scared me," she tapped her own chest, dramatic and neat. I stared at her face and waited for real fear. Nothing cracked, nothing slipped, nothing even wavered. It felt like she chose that line from a menu. I took a step toward the driver's side and blocked her path. She tried to slide past anyway, shoulder first like a shove. I caught her elbow and guided her back, careful and tense. Her eyes flicked down to my grip like she was measuring. "Don't grab me," she said it louder than needed. 2 people nearby glanced over, then looked away fast. My stomach dropped again, now I was the threat. She watched my reaction and her mouth twitched barely. I hate admitting this, but I softened right there. I loosened my hands and took a half step back. She stepped forward into that space without hesitation. That's when I realized she wanted the positions, not the truth. "Let's just go," she pointed toward the road like it was nothing. I shook my head and kept my body between her and the seat. She rolled her eyes and exhaled hard through her nose. That little impatience felt dangerous in a new way. I reached into the car and grabbed my phone. My thumb hovered over calling someone, then stalled out. She noticed and leaned in close, voice low and sharp. "Who are you about to tell?" I swallowed and tried to sound normal, which was pathetic. "I'm calling a ride," my voice came out thin and tight. She smiled again, small and controlled, then pointed at me. "You know they'll think you're unstable, right?" I froze because she said it like a fact. She tilted her head and studied my face for a reaction. Then she asked it casually, like a joke at dinner. "If we crashed, would they blame you?" I snapped the glove box open and grabbed the dash cam card. My fingers fumbled twice, then finally pinched it free. I got back in and locked the doors like that mattered. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped it again. I jammed the card into my phone with a cheap adapter. The video loaded slow, which felt personal. I scrubbed back and forth until that moment returned. My chest tightened the second her arm crossed over. "Here's the part that messed me up," she checked the mirror first. Not a scared glance, more like a quick alignment. Then her hand moved fast and clean onto the wheel. No hesitation, no confusion, just a precise grab. I watched my own reaction and hated it. I looked frantic, like I was the unstable one. I lunged and jerked and fought like an animal. Her face stayed neutral the whole time. I replayed it again, then again, then again. Each time I noticed a new detail I missed before. Her other hand stayed in her lap like she had time. Who has time during that? A knock hit the window and I almost jumped out. She stood there with her phone raised, eyes narrowed. She pointed at my hands, then at the card. "What are you doing with that?" I shoved the adapter into my pocket and got out. My voice came out too high and I hated it instantly. "Just checking what happened," I kept it short on purpose. She stepped closer like she owned the space. "Delete it," she held her hand out, palm up. Not a request, more like a command. I backed away and tucked my pocket tighter. Her smile showed up for 1 second, then vanished. I tried to look steady, but my pulse gave me away. She leaned in and lowered her voice to a whisper. "You're making this weird." Her eyes stayed locked on mine. That line landed like a threat, not a complaint. I went back inside with her right behind me. I set my phone down and acted casual, which was pathetic. She watched my hands more than my face. I could feel her tracking every move. Later she showered and I moved like a thief. I picked up her phone and my heart hammered loud. I hated myself for it and I kept going anyway. My thumb hovered, then tapped her notes. A list sat there with dates and short phrases. One line read, "Curve after exit," like a reminder. Another line read, "Keep him angry," and my throat tightened. Why would that be written down at all? I flipped to her drafts and found a message half written. "He will lose control if I pull hard," it said. The words looked cold, like someone wrote instructions. I stared until my eyes burned, then took screenshots. Another draft sat below it, and that one felt worse. "Make it look like his mistake," was the first line. Then a number was typed under it, big and clean. I didn't need context to know what a payout meant. I forwarded the screenshots to myself with shaking thumbs. The send arrow felt like crossing a line I couldn't undo. Behind me the shower stopped and the water went quiet. I heard the bathroom door click and my screen lit up again. The bathroom door swung open and she walked straight at me. Water still clung to her hair and she moved like nothing happened. Her eyes went to my phone, then to my face. My screen was still lit and she saw it. She stopped close enough to crowd my breath. "Give it here." Her hand stayed out, steady and expectant. I slid the phone behind my back like a dumb teenager. Her gaze dropped to my pocket and held there. I tried to speak and nothing came out at first. Then I pushed air through my teeth and forced it. "I saw your drafts." The words sounded unreal in my mouth. Her expression barely changed, which felt like confirmation. She tilted her head and made a small sound of pity. "You went through my stuff." Her eyebrows lifted like I confessed. I nodded once because lying felt pointless now. She took one step back, like she needed space to perform. She put her fingertips to her temple and sighed. "I can't believe you." She let the sentence hang. Then she looked at the ceiling like she was counting. When her eyes returned to me, they were sharp. I held my phone up and showed one screenshot. Her focus snapped to the text and froze for half a second. Then she yelled, "Odd, quick and clean, like it was a trick." "You think that means anything?" Her voice stayed smooth, too smooth. I swiped to the next screenshot and watched her pupils shift. She reached for the phone fast, not gentle this time. I yanked it away and my arm hit the wall behind me. Her hand hovered in the air, like she was deciding what to do. "Stop acting crazy," she pointed at my chest like a judge. I hated how that word landed because it worked on me. My shoulders dropped a little before I caught myself. She saw that tiny drop and leaned into it. "Okay," she lifted both palms in a fake surrender. "I'll explain." She sat on the edge of the bed like a counselor. I stayed standing because sitting felt like losing. She patted the mattress once like training a dog. "You scared me on the road," she spoke slow and careful. "You get intense when you drive." She watched my face for flinches. I opened my mouth to argue, then shut it again. Because part of me remembered my own panic and hated how messy it looked. "I wrote notes because I was anxious." She shrugged like it was normal. "Sometimes I write dark thoughts." She glanced at my phone again. The way she said it felt practiced, like therapy language. It almost made me doubt my own eyes, almost. I stepped forward and held the screenshots inches from her. "Then explain the payout number." My voice came out tight. She stared at it and chewed her cheek once fast. That tiny chew felt like a crack finally. Her face softened and she reached for my wrist. I pulled away before she could touch me. She paused, then let her arm fall like she was wounded. "Why are you being like this?" Her tone turned warm like honey on a trap. I didn't answer. I hit record on my phone. My thumb shook over the screen and I hated that too. She noticed the red dot and her jaw set hard. "You're recording me." Her smile disappeared, clean cut. "I'm protecting myself." The sentence surprised me. She stood up fast and walked toward the door. Then she stopped with her hand on the knob and looked back. "If you keep that, I'll ruin you." Her voice was flat and final. I stayed still because moving felt dangerous. She turned the knob slowly, like she wanted me to beg. I didn't, and that seemed to irritate her. "Delete it." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I shook my head once and felt my heart beat in my ears. She stepped toward me again, closer than before. Then her hand shot out and grabbed my pocket hard. I slapped her hand away and she let herself stumble back. She hit the bed and let out a sharp gasp. Her eyes went wide and wet in an instant. "You just hit me." She touched her cheek like it hurt. The switch was so fast it made my head spin, and I knew what was next. She lifted her phone and tapped the screen twice. I heard the call connect before I could stop it. Her voice turned small and shaky. "Perfect." "Hi," she sniffed once. "He's scaring me," and she stared straight at me. Her thumb hovered over the call screen and she stared me down. I grabbed my jacket and moved toward the hallway, slow and deliberate. She raised her voice instantly, small and broken on cue. My blood went cold when I heard her sniff on command again. I stepped into the hall and shut the door behind me. Not locked, not slammed, just closed like a normal person. I kept my hands visible and backed away from the frame. Because I knew what she wanted the scene to look like. "You're leaving me here with him," her voice carried through the door. I didn't answer. I kept walking like my life depended on it. My fingers tapped my screen and started saving everything to cloud storage. It felt paranoid until it felt necessary. I slid down the stairs and headed straight for my car. Then I stopped because driving suddenly felt like a trap. I pivoted and walked to the sidewalk instead. Every step felt loud, like I was walking into a spotlight. My neighbor's porch light flicked on and I lifted both hands. "Can you stay outside for a minute?" My voice came out rough. He blinked, then nodded and stepped down without questions. That nod was the first tiny lifeline I grabbed. The first cruiser rolled in fast and stopped hard. 2 officers got out and scanned me like a threat. I kept my palms open and pointed at my own chest. "She's inside," I swallowed. "She's lying." That word tasted risky. They didn't react, which scared me more than yelling. One officer walked past me toward the door. The other stayed near me and watched my hands like a hawk. My neighbor stayed on the porch and didn't look away. The door opened and she spilled into the hallway crying. Her shoulders shook and her voice cracked just right. She pointed at me like I was holding a knife. I told him to stop. She wiped her face fast and practiced. I almost laughed, and that would have ruined me. So I bit the inside of my cheek and stayed still. Please, I nodded toward the officer. Ask about the road. Her crying hitched for 1 second, then continued. The officer asked her what happened and she went vague. He got mad while driving. She touched her throat like she was choking. Then she added, he scares me sometimes, like it was casual truth. That little word sometimes made my vision blur. I lifted my device and held it out carefully. I have video. My voice shook, but I kept going. She snapped her head toward it and her eyes sharpened. The officer saw that shift and I saw him register it. Sir, hand it to me. He held a gloved hand out. I did it because refusing would look guilty. She took a step forward, then stopped herself. Her breath quickened, and for once it was real. The officer watched the clip and his face didn't change. Then he rewound it and watched again, slower. Her jaw clenched tight enough to show a muscle jump. He looked up at her and didn't look away. That your hand on the wheel? His tone stayed neutral. She blinked hard and forced a laugh that sounded wrong. You can't even tell, she shrugged too quick. The officer turned the screen toward the other officer and waited. They pulled her aside and asked for her version again. She shifted her story like she was changing outfits. First it was a joke, then it was fear, then it was my temper. Each switch landed flatter than the last. I stood there like a statue and hated myself for it. Part of me wanted to shout every detail at once. Another part knew shouting would play into her script. So I stayed quiet and let the evidence talk for now. One officer came back and asked if I had more. I nodded and opened my cloud folder with trembling fingers. I showed the text captures from her notes and drafts. Her face went still, too still. Those are fake, she snapped the words out, sharp and loud. Then she softened and tried a sad smile, like an apology mask. Someone could type anything. She spread her hands like a helpless victim. The officer looked at her hands, then looked at mine. He asked her to unlock her device for verification. Her shoulders lifted like she might explode. I don't have to, her voice rose and cracked at the end. That refusal hung in the air like smoke. They didn't cuff her, not right then. They separated us and told her to stay inside. One officer asked me if I had somewhere safe to go. I nodded and my throat burned with relief and shame. I walked to my neighbor and asked for a ride. I hated asking, but I hated staying more. He grabbed his keys without a lecture and led the way. As we pulled off, I saw her silhouette at the window, watching. My screen buzzed 3 times before we reached the corner. I didn't open anything, I just turned it face down. My neighbor glanced at it and then at my face. You're not going back tonight, he said, and it wasn't a question. We stopped at my brother's place and I knocked hard. The door opened and he took one look at me. He didn't ask why, he stepped aside immediately. That silence felt like safety and I almost collapsed. I sat on the couch and forced my hands to stop shaking. Then I backed up every file again like a man possessed. I sent copies to my brother, my neighbor, and one close friend. Because if she erased one place, I needed 10. My brother watched me and finally asked one thing. Did she try to crash you? His voice stayed low. I nodded once and he swore under his breath. He told me to sleep and I couldn't. At 2 in the morning, my device rang from an unknown number. I answered on speaker while my brother recorded on his phone. Her voice slid in smooth, almost sweet, like nothing happened. Come home, she paused. We need to fix this tonight. I didn't speak at first because my mouth went dry. She filled the silence fast, like she feared quiet. I told them you were upset. She let out a tiny laugh. Don't make me look stupid, she added, and the sweetness vanished. My brother leaned forward and mouthed, keep her talking. So I asked, why did you write those notes? She exhaled like I bored her. It was just planning, she said. Planning, that single word hit like a punch. Planning what? I asked, voice careful. She hesitated and I heard her swallow. Then she went defensive, voice rising fast. You always do this, she snapped, and it sounded automatic. I pressed again because the record mattered now. You wanted me to lose control, I said it slow. Her laugh came out sharp, almost annoyed. Don't be dramatic, she said, and the line felt familiar. Then she slipped and corrected herself too quickly. I mean, nothing happened, her breath hitched after that. That correction was the first real crack I caught on audio. My brother's eyes widened like he knew it too. The next morning I went back with police escort. I kept my voice flat and my hands visible again. She stood in the doorway and stared at my brother behind me. Her eyes flicked to his phone and her face tigged. Tend. I grabbed a bag and moved fast, no wandering. I didn't touch anything that didn't belong to me. She followed me room to room like a shadow with teeth. You're doing this for attention, she muttered, and I didn't respond. When I reached for paperwork in a drawer, she lunged. Her hand slapped the papers down like she owned them. That's mine, her voice sharpened into a hiss. I froze, then slowly slid the top sheet free anyway. It was an insurance document with my name printed bold. I felt my pulse slam against my ribs. I flipped to the signature line and my stomach turned. Her handwriting sat there like she wrote my future. I looked at the effective date and did the math fast. It started weeks before the road incident. My mouth opened and nothing came out. She watched me read it, and she didn't even pretend anymore. The officer stepped in and asked what that was. I held the page out with shaking hands. My voice finally worked, but it sounded thin. She took a policy out on me, I said, and the room went silent. She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall. People plan for things, her tone was casual, almost smug. Then she tilted her head like she was curious. Do you think you're special? She asked, and my blood ran cold. The officer asked her why she signed for me. She shrugged and looked at her nails. He doesn't pay attention, she said, like it explained everything. That one sentence told me how she saw me, an object. I handed over the page and my device with the files. My brother stood close enough to block her if needed. She stared at him, then at me, then smiled without warmth. You won't prove anything, she whispered, and it wasn't a guess. The officer told her to stop contacting me. He said it plainly, like a boundary line. She nodded obediently, like she loved rules. Then she waited until his back turned and mouthed, "You're dead." I didn't react because reacting was her food. I packed the last bag and walked out without looking back. My legs felt weak, but I kept moving anyway. Outside, the air hit my face like a slap, and I stayed upright. In the days after, I filed reports and made copies. I changed passwords, froze credit, and checked every account. I hated how much work fear creates. I also hated how late I started. She tried to bait me through mutual friends. She posted vague stuff online about being survivor strong. She sent one message from a new number, then another. Each one sounded softer, then meaner, like she cycled strategies. I stopped replying completely and saved everything instead. My lawyer told me that silence is a shield. I didn't like that advice, but it worked. She got louder when I stayed quiet, which told me plenty. A detective called later and asked about the road footage again. He wanted the raw file, not just the clip. I sent it over and felt my hands shake all over. Because once the system starts moving, you cannot control it. Weeks passed and I kept expecting her to show up. Every car door outside made my heart jump. I started parking where cameras could see the lot. I hated living like that, but I kept living. One night, my brother handed me his phone and played a voicemail. Her voice came through, low and angry, no tears at all. I should have done it when I had the chance, she said. Then she laughed quietly and the recording ended. I sat there and stared at the wall for a long time. Part of me felt stupid for missing signs. Part of me felt lucky for getting a second chance. Mostly I felt something new, clarity that didn't wobble. I don't tell this story because I want pity. I tell it because people think danger looks obvious. Sometimes it looks like a grin and a soft voice. Sometimes it looks like someone's hand on your steering wheel and no fear.